The massive ship appeared without warning above Earth's moon, its hull gleaming like polished silver against the black of space. Inside the ship, Supreme Leader Vextar studied the blue and green planet below through his command screen. His four eyes blinked slowly as he read the initial reports from his scouts. "Another primitive world," he said to his second-in-command, General Lockmar. "They have barely reached their own moon. This should be simple." Vextar had done this thousands of times before. His Galactic Council had brought peace and order to over 50,000 worlds across the galaxy. Every species eventually understood that joining the Council was the only logical choice. They offered protection, technology, and guidance. In return, they asked only for complete loyalty and submission to Council authority. The process was always the same. First contact, demonstration of superior technology, then the choice: join willingly or face the consequences. No species had ever chosen the consequences. Down on Earth, Hyun-Woo Kim sat in his office at the United Nations building in New York. As Earth's lead diplomat, he had spent years preparing for this moment. Humanity had detected the alien ship 3 days ago, and every government on Earth had agreed to let him handle first contact. Hyun-Woo was not what most people expected from Earth's top diplomat. He was a former military strategist who had fought in several conflicts before turning to diplomacy. His face showed the scars of his past, but his eyes held the calm confidence of someone who had faced death and lived to tell about it. The communication device on his desk buzzed. The aliens were ready to talk. "People of Earth," came a voice that seemed to speak in every language at once. "I am Supreme Leader Vextar of the Galactic Council. We bring greetings from the civilized galaxy." Hyun-Woo pressed the reply button. "Welcome to Earth. I am Hyun-Woo Kim, speaking for all of humanity. We are honored by your visit." "Your species shows promise," Vextar continued. "You have developed space travel and nuclear technology. These are the markers we look for in primitive civilizations ready to join the galactic community." On the alien ship, Vextar felt confident. The humans' response was polite and respectful, just like all the others. Soon they would be begging to join the council. "We offer you membership in our council," Vextar said. "You will receive advanced technology, protection from hostile forces, and guidance from species that have traveled the stars for millions of years. All we ask in return is your complete loyalty to Council authority." There was a long pause. Vextar waited patiently. Sometimes primitive species needed time to understand the magnitude of what they were being offered. Finally, Hyun-Woo's voice came through the communicator. "We appreciate your generous offer, Supreme Leader Vextar. However, after careful consideration, humanity must respectfully decline membership in your Galactic Council. We prefer to maintain our independence." The silence that followed stretched for nearly a full minute. General Lockmar's 6 arms twitched nervously. In all his years serving the Council, he had never heard those words before. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding," Vextar said slowly. "Perhaps you do not comprehend what we are offering. We will demonstrate." The alien ship moved closer to Earth. Weapons systems that could crack a planet in half powered up with a low hum that vibrated through the hull. Energy beams lanced out, striking an asteroid near Mars and reducing it to glowing dust in seconds. "As you can see," Vextar broadcast to Earth, "we possess technology beyond your current understanding. This same technology can be yours. All you need to do is accept our guidance." In his office, Hyun-Woo watched the display on his monitors. Behind him, So-Young Park, Earth's chief of defensive technologies, studied the alien weapons with intense interest. "Impressive," Hyun-Woo said into the communicator. "Your technology is certainly advanced. However, our answer remains the same. Humanity declines your offer." Vextar's 4 eyes widened. This had never happened before. Not once in 50,000 conquered worlds. "You do not understand," he said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "This is not truly an offer. This is how the galaxy works. The strong guide the weak, the advanced protect the primitive. You will join the Council, or you will face the consequences of remaining outside civilized space." Hyun-Woo leaned back in his chair. So-Young had finished her preliminary analysis of the alien weapons and was now shaking her head with what looked like disappointment. "We understand perfectly," Hyun-Woo replied. You want us to give up our freedom in exchange for your protection and technology. Many humans have faced similar choices throughout our history. Our answer has always been the same. We choose freedom. General Lockmar leaned over to whisper in Vextar's ear. Perhaps we should demonstrate on one of their cities. That usually convinces the stubborn ones. But Vextar held up a hand. Something about the humans' tone bothered him. There was no fear in it, no awe at their superior technology. If anything, the humans sounded almost bored. You are making a mistake, Vextar warned. No species can survive alone in the galaxy. There are threats out there that would destroy your entire world without a second thought. Only under Council protection can you hope to survive. In the background, Hyunwoo could hear So Young talking quietly to her team. She was already working on something, probably trying to figure out how the alien weapons worked. That was typical of humanity. When faced with superior technology, they didn't worship it or fear it. They studied it and tried to figure out how to build something better. We appreciate your concern for our safety, Hyunwoo said. But humanity has faced extinction many times in our history. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters. We have always found a way to adapt and overcome. We will continue to do so. Captain Jinho Lee entered the office and whispered something in Hyunwoo's ear. Jinho commanded humanity's first interstellar vessel, a ship that was primitive by galactic standards, but represented the best of human engineering and determination. I have been informed that you have been observing our planet for some time, Hyunwoo continued. You have seen our history. You know what we are capable of. We are not asking you to leave our solar system, but we are making it clear that Earth will remain independent. Vextar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Confusion. Every other species had reacted with either terror at his weapons, demonstration, or greed at his technology offers. These humans seemed genuinely unimpressed by both. You are being foolish, he said. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. Your weapons could not scratch our shields. Your ships are barely capable of reaching your own moon. What makes you think you can survive without our protection? The answer came not from Hyunwoo, but from Jinho Lee, who had taken the communicator. Supreme Leader Vextar, I am Captain Jinho Lee of the Earth Defense Force. I have been studying your ship since you arrived. Your technology is indeed advanced, but it is also predictable. You follow patterns that suggest your civilization has become comfortable with easy victories. We humans are not comfortable with anything. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome. That is what makes us think we can survive. So Young Park stepped forward and added her own thoughts. Your weapons are impressive, but they are designed for overwhelming primitive species who have never seen such power. We have seen the readings from your demonstration. We know your energy output, your targeting systems, and your power distribution. Give us time, and we will find ways to defend against them. Vextar stared at his screens in disbelief. Not only were these humans refusing his offer, they were analyzing his weapons and showing no fear of his superior technology. This was completely outside his experience. This conversation is over, he announced. We will give you time to reconsider your position. When we return, we expect a more reasonable response. The alien ship pulled back from Earth, moving to a position beyond the moon. But it did not leave the solar system. In his office, Hyunwoo Kim sat back and smiled. The first round was over, and humanity had made its position clear. They would not submit to alien rule, no matter how advanced the aliens claimed to be. Outside his window, he could see people going about their daily lives, unaware that their world had just refused to join a galactic empire. That was the way. Hyunwoo preferred it. Humanity would face this challenge the same way they faced all challenges, together, determined, and free. 3 weeks had passed since the first contact, and Vextar found himself in a position he had never experienced before. He stood in the council chamber of his massive ship, surrounded by holographic images of other council leaders from across the galaxy. Their various alien faces all showed the same expression, confusion mixed with growing concern. Explain to us again how a primitive species has refused council membership, demanded Council Elder Thraknos, her tentacles writhing with agitation. In my 3,000 years of service, this has never happened, Vextar's 4 eyes dimmed with embarrassment. They simply said no. When we demonstrated our superior technology, they showed no fear. When we offered them advancement, they showed no interest. They claimed they prefer their independence. The other council members exchanged glances through their holographic connections. This was more than just unusual, it was potentially dangerous. If word spread that a primitive species could simply refuse council authority, it might give other member worlds ideas. Perhaps a larger demonstration is needed, suggested General Mordak from his warship in the Andromeda sector. Destroy one of their outer planets. That usually convinces the stubborn ones. But Council Elder Yithvar shook his ancient head. We cannot afford to make martyrs of them. If we destroy them outright, we lose the chance to study what makes them different. No, we must find other ways to pressure them. On Earth, the situation was quite different from what the Council expected. Instead of panic or despair, humanity had responded to the alien presence with something the Council had never encountered: curiosity, mixed with determination. Minjai Cho stood in the war room, deep beneath the Pentagon, studying tactical displays with his team of military strategists. As Earth's chief military strategist, he had been tasked with developing defense plans against a technologically superior enemy. The challenge excited him rather than frightened him. They have been scanning our planet continuously, reported Lieutenant Colonel Park, one of Minjai's top analysts. But their scanning patterns are very predictable. They seem to follow strict protocols that never change. Minjai nodded thoughtfully. That suggests a rigid military structure. They have become comfortable with easy victories against species that surrender quickly. They may not know how to handle prolonged resistance. In another part of the Pentagon complex, Yu Jin Nam was having the time of her life. As lead scientist for the Alien Technology Analysis Team, she had been given access to every piece of data Earth's instruments had gathered about the alien ship. The technology was advanced, but it followed logical principles that human science could understand. Look at this energy signature, she said to her assistant, pointing at a complex waveform on her computer screen. Their power systems are incredibly efficient, but they appear to have built-in limitations. It is almost as if they designed them to be just powerful enough to overwhelm primitive species, but not to face real resistance. Her assistant, Dr. Kim, leaned in closer. You think they have never faced serious opposition? I think they have forgotten how to fight against an enemy that fights back, Eugene replied. Their entire approach seems designed for intimidation rather than actual warfare. The aliens were about to test that theory. Vextar had decided to escalate his approach. If demonstrations of superior technology were not enough, perhaps demonstrations of superior numbers would work better. The single ship above Earth was joined by 12 others, each one larger and more impressive than the last. The fleet arranged itself in a formation that blocked out the sun for several minutes at a time, casting ominous shadows across entire continents. People of Earth! Vextar's voice boomed from speakers that had been placed across the planet. You have had time to consider our generous offer. As you can see, we have brought additional ships to emphasize the seriousness of our intentions. Surely you now understand that resistance is futile. The response came not from Hyunwoo Kim this time, but from an unexpected source, Seok Jin. Oh, a former software engineer who had become the unofficial leader of Earth's underground resistance movement, had hacked into the alien communication system. Greetings, Supreme Leader Vextar. Seok Jin's voice came through the alien speakers. This is Seok Jin Oh, speaking for the free people of Earth. We have indeed been considering your offer, and we have some feedback for you. Vextar was so shocked that an alien had broken into his communication system that he forgot to cut the transmission. First, Seok Jin continued, your ship formations are quite impressive visually, but they represent poor tactical positioning. By clustering your vessels so closely, you have created multiple vulnerabilities that a prepared enemy could exploit. Second, your communication encryption is approximately 50 years behind what we would consider secure by Earth standards. Third, your power distribution systems have a critical flaw that could be exploited if someone knew what to look for. The transmission cut off as Vextar finally remembered to close the channel, but the damage was done. Not only had the humans refused to be intimidated by his fleet, they had used the opportunity to demonstrate that they had already begun analyzing and understanding his technology. How is this possible? General Lockmar asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Their technology is primitive. They should not be capable of breaking our encryption or analyzing our systems. But Yujin Nam had already moved beyond simple analysis. Working with a team of Earth's best engineers, she had begun developing countermeasures based on what they had learned about alien technology. The breakthrough came when they realized that the aliens had never needed to develop defenses against their own weapons. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, she explained to Min Jae Cho during a joint briefing. But they are not designed to handle unconventional attacks. We might not be able to match their technology, but we can certainly surprise them. The next phase of alien pressure came in the form of psychological warfare. Vex Tar had ordered the deployment of fear ships, vessels specifically designed to project waves of terror and despair into the minds of target populations. These ships had broken the will of countless species, reducing entire civilizations to begging for council protection. The fear ships took position around Earth and began their assault on human minds. Waves of artificially generated terror, hopelessness, and despair washed over the planet's population. The aliens expected mass panic, riots, and desperate pleas for protection. Instead, they got something completely unexpected. Hae Jin Kang, a psychologist who had been studying the alien psychological attacks, was the first to understand what was happening. The fear projections were having an effect on humans, but not the intended one. The aliens are trying to make us afraid, she reported to the emergency council meeting. But they do not understand human psychology. Fear does not make us surrender. It makes us angry. The evidence was everywhere. Instead of cowering in terror, humans were organizing resistance groups. Instead of begging for alien protection, they were volunteering for dangerous missions to gather intelligence on the alien fleet. The fear projections that were supposed to break human will were actually strengthening human resolve. Seokjin-O's resistance network had grown from a few thousand hackers and engineers to a global movement of millions. They called themselves the Earth Liberation Front, and their motto was simple: we do not kneel. The aliens made a fundamental mistake. Seok-Jin broadcast from his hidden base. They assumed that because we are technologically primitive, we are also mentally primitive. They do not understand that humans have been fighting superior enemies for our entire existence. Every predator that hunted our ancestors was stronger, faster, or more dangerous than we were. We survived not through superior strength, but through superior cunning, cooperation, and stubborn refusal to give up. The psychological warfare backfired so completely that some of the alien crew members began to suffer from the fear projections themselves. They had never encountered a species that seemed to grow stronger when threatened rather than weaker. Captain Jin-Ho Lee had been busy during the weeks of alien pressure. His team had been working around the clock to upgrade Earth's small fleet of interstellar vessels. Using principles derived from captured alien technology, they had managed to improve their ship's capabilities far beyond what should have been possible. We cannot match their raw power, Jin-Ho reported to the Defense Council. But we do not need to. We have something they do not expect: unpredictability. Their entire approach is based on overwhelming primitive species that fight in predictable patterns. We do not fight in predictable patterns. The test of that theory came when one of the alien ships moved closer to Earth, apparently intending to demonstrate its weapons on a military target. Jin-Ho's flagship, the Defiant, intercepted the alien vessel halfway between Earth and the Moon. The alien ship was 10 times larger than the Defiant and carried weapons that could destroy a small moon. But when it fired its main cannon at the human ship, the energy beam passed harmlessly through empty space. The Defiant had used a maneuver that the aliens had never seen before, spinning in 3 dimensions while simultaneously changing its energy signature to confuse alien targeting systems. Supreme Leader Vextar stood in his private chambers, staring out at the blue world that had become the source of his greatest frustration. 2 months had passed since first contact, and not only had the humans refused to submit, they had actually grown bolder in their resistance. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy that other member species were asking uncomfortable questions about why they had joined the Council so easily when these humans simply said no. The emergency council session was about to begin, and Vextar knew that his leadership was being questioned. Council Elder Thraknos had already sent private messages suggesting that perhaps a new approach was needed, with new leadership to implement it. The situation has become unacceptable, Elder Thraknos declared as the holographic council session began. Word of human resistance is spreading to our member worlds. We have received reports of unrest on 17 different planets. Species that have been loyal council members for thousands of years are suddenly asking why they cannot be independent like the humans. Vextar's 4 eyes darkened with shame. The humans are more resilient than anticipated. Standard intimidation and psychological warfare have failed. They seem to interpret our pressure as challenges to overcome rather than threats to fear. Then we must escalate beyond standard methods, suggested Council Military Commander Zethrak, his insectoid features clicking with agitation. I recommend we authorize the use of forbidden technologies, reality manipulation, temporal weapons, cultural corruption protocols. We cannot allow this rebellion to spread. There was a long silence as the Council considered this suggestion. The forbidden technologies had been banned for good reasons. They were dangerous not just to the target species, but to the wielders as well. But the threat posed by human independence was beginning to outweigh those concerns. Authorized, Elder, Thraknos finally declared. Use whatever means necessary to bring the humans under Council control. This resistance ends now. On Earth, the past 2 months had been a time of unprecedented cooperation and innovation. Tae-Young Jung, Earth's new counterintelligence chief, had established a global network that monitored alien activities with efficiency that surprised even the humans themselves. Every alien movement, every scan, every communication was detected and analyzed within minutes. They are preparing something new, Tae-Young reported to the emergency defense meeting. Their energy signatures have changed and they have begun deploying technologies we have not seen before. Some of their ships are generating spatial distortions that our instruments cannot fully analyze. Hyojin Kang, who had become Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. The psychological profile suggests they are moving beyond standard operational parameters. When a rigid hierarchical society like theirs abandons established protocols, it usually means they are becoming desperate. The first sign of the new alien approach came in the form of cultural infiltration. Alien agents, using advanced disguise technology, began appearing in major population centers across Earth. They looked like humans, sounded like humans, and even seemed to think like humans. Their mission was to spread doubt, fear, and despair through subtle manipulation of human social structures. The infiltration plan had worked perfectly on thousands of other worlds. A few carefully placed agents could undermine an entire civilization's confidence in their leadership and their ability to resist Council authority. Within weeks, most species would be begging for Council intervention to restore order. But the human response was completely unexpected. Instead of being manipulated by the alien agents, humans began studying them. Look at this. Dr. Park showed Tae-Young a video recording from a security camera in Seoul. This individual has been identified as an alien infiltrator. Watch how he interacts with people. On the screen, a figure that looked perfectly human was attempting to spread panic about the alien threat. But instead of becoming afraid, the humans around him were asking detailed questions about his sources, challenging his logic, and ultimately ignoring his attempts at manipulation. He is using techniques that probably work on species with hierarchical social structures, Tae-Young observed. But humans are argumentative by nature. We do not accept authority just because someone claims to have it. We question everything. Within days, alien infiltrators were being identified and captured across the planet. Not by sophisticated counterintelligence operations, but by ordinary citizens who noticed that the strangers asking suspicious questions could not answer basic questions about human culture and history. Seok Jin-Oh's resistance network turned the capture of alien agents into a global game. Spot the Alien became a popular activity, with humans competing to identify infiltrators based on subtle behavioral clues. The aliens had never faced a species that treated counterintelligence as entertainment. Frustrated by the failure of cultural infiltration, the Council moved to their next forbidden weapon, mimetic warfare. Alien ships began broadcasting specially designed information patterns intended to corrupt human thought processes and break down social cohesion. These mimetic weapons had destroyed the cultural identity of entire civilizations, reducing proud species to confused, dependent populations that welcomed council guidance. The mimetic attack targeted every aspect of human communication. Television broadcasts, internet traffic, radio signals, even printed materials were infected with carefully crafted patterns designed to make humans lose faith in their own judgment and abilities. He Jin Kang was the first to recognize what was happening. "They are trying to reprogram our thinking," she announced during an emergency broadcast to the global population. "But they have made a fundamental error. They do not understand how human minds actually work." The alien mimetic weapons were designed for species with uniform thought patterns and centralized information processing. They worked by creating logical loops and contradictions that paralyzed rational thinking. But human thinking was not primarily rational. It was creative, intuitive, and chaotic in ways that the aliens could not predict or control. Instead of becoming confused and dependent, humans began analyzing the mimetic patterns themselves. University students turned the study of alien mental manipulation into doctoral thesis projects. Artists incorporated the patterns into abstract artworks that somehow neutralized their effects. Children turned the recognition of mimetic attacks into playground games. "The aliens keep trying to control us by understanding us," Seok Jin observed during one of his resistance broadcasts. "But they understand us less with each attempt. They see us as a problem to be solved with the right equation. We are not an equation. We are a song that changes every time it is sung." The failure of mimetic warfare drove the Council to their most desperate measure: reality manipulation technology. Alien ships equipped with dimensional engineering devices began altering the physical laws around Earth's solar system. They increased gravity in some areas, altered the speed of light in others, and even tried changing the fundamental constants that governed atomic structure. The reality manipulation was intended to make Earth uninhabitable for human life while leaving the planet itself intact for Council use. No species had ever survived having their local reality altered. Most died within hours as their biology failed to function under changed physical laws. But humans adapted. Dong Hyun Yu, Earth's leading engineer, had been studying alien technology for months and had anticipated this possibility. His teams had developed temporary shelters that maintained normal physical constants in small areas, allowing human populations to survive while they worked on larger solutions. "They are changing the rules of physics around us," Dong Hyun explained during a global engineering conference. "But rules can be learned, adapted to, and eventually changed back. They have given us the ultimate engineering challenge, and we will meet it." Working with Yoo Jin Nam's research team, Dong Hyun began developing humanity's first reality stabilization technology. It was primitive compared to the alien devices, but it worked on principles the aliens had never considered. Instead of forcing reality to conform to their will, the human technology worked with the natural flexibility of space-time to gradually restore normal conditions. The breakthrough came when they realized that the alien reality manipulation technology had a critical weakness. It required constant energy input to maintain the alterations. If that energy could be disrupted or redirected, normal reality would reassert itself automatically. "We do not need to overpower their technology," Yoo Jin explained to the Defense Council. "We just need to convince it to stop working." The first human reality stabilizer was activated 3 weeks after the alien reality attack began. It was a crude device that covered only a few square kilometers, but it worked. Normal physics returned to the protected area, and human technology began functioning normally again. More importantly, the stabilizer had an unexpected effect on the alien manipulation devices. The interaction between human and alien reality technologies created a feedback loop that actually amplified the human device's effectiveness while weakening the alien systems. They built their technology assuming they would never face resistance, Dong Hyun observed as he watched the alien reality distortions collapse one by one. The Council's desperation led to their greatest mistake. In a moment of frustrated anger, Vextar authorized the transmission of detailed records about the Council's peaceful expansion across the galaxy. He intended to show humans how hopeless resistance truly was by demonstrating the vast scope of Council authority. Instead, he revealed the true nature of what humanity was facing. The transmission included detailed accounts of how the Council had pacified thousands of worlds. Species that had submitted without resistance found their populations relocated to crowded urban centers while their homeworlds were strip-mined for resources. Cultures that had welcomed Council guidance discovered their traditions systematically erased and replaced with standardized Council protocols. Beings that had trusted Council promises of protection learned that protection meant complete dependence on Council charity. Hyunwoo Kim sat in his office, reading through the intercepted transmissions with growing horror and determination. The aliens had not come to offer partnership or guidance. They had come to add Earth to a vast empire built on the systematic enslavement of species too frightened or awed to resist. "Get me a connection to every government on Earth," he told his assistant, "and prepare a full broadcast to the global population. Everyone needs to see this." The revelation transformed humanity's stubborn resistance into something far more dangerous: a liberation campaign. The knowledge that thousands of species were living under Council oppression gave human determination a new focus. They were no longer just defending Earth. They were fighting for the freedom of the entire galaxy. Woo Jin Shin, who had been selected to lead humanity's first interstellar expedition, stood before the assembled crew of the newly constructed ship, Freedom's Call. The vessel represented the best of human engineering, incorporating technologies reverse-engineered from alien sources, but redesigned according to human principles. "Our mission is not conquest," Woo Jin told his crew. "We are not going to replace the Council's empire with our own. We are going to ask a simple question wherever we go. Why did you agree to this?" The Freedom's Call launched 3 months after. The Council's revelations followed by 6 smaller human vessels. Their destination was Kepler 442b, a Council member world relatively close to Earth. Intelligence gathered from captured alien databases indicated that the planet's original inhabitants, a peaceful species called the Velhan, had been relocated to make room for Council mining operations. The human fleet's approach to Kepler 442b was detected immediately by Council sensors, but their response was confused and hesitant. Human ships were not behaving like any invasion force in Council experience. They were not targeting military installations or population centers. Instead, they were broadcasting messages on civilian communication frequencies. "People of Kepler 442b," came Woo Jin's transmission in the local language. "We are humans from the planet Earth. We have come to ask you some questions about your relationship with the Galactic Council. We mean no harm to you or your world. We simply want to understand how you came to join the Council and whether you are satisfied with the arrangement." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Velhan civilians, who had not been permitted to communicate freely in decades, began broadcasting their own messages back to the human ships. Their stories painted a picture of systematic oppression that made even hardened human soldiers angry. "We welcome the Council," transmitted Elder Kethron, one of the few surviving Velhan leaders. "They promised us protection from cosmic dangers and advancement beyond our dreams. Instead, they took our children to work in their factories, destroyed our cities to build mining complexes, and told us we should be grateful for their guidance." Yoon-Soo Kim, Earth's diplomatic envoy, worked around the clock to establish communication with oppressed populations across the Kepler 442 system. What she discovered was a pattern repeated on every Council world. Initial contact followed by promises, then gradual erosion of local authority, and finally complete subjugation disguised as protection. "The Council's entire empire is built on a lie," she reported back to Earth. "They convince species that joining is the only way to survive, then slowly remove their ability to survive independently. After a few generations, the subject species genuinely believe they need Council protection because they have forgotten how to protect themselves." But the most shocking discovery came when human engineers began analyzing Council installations on the occupied worlds. Jae-Hyun Park, commanding Earth's growing space fleet, led the technical assessment team that studied Council mining and manufacturing operations. "Their technology is not as advanced as they claim," Jae-Hyun reported during a secure transmission to Earth. "It is efficient and standardized, but it is also limited. They have optimized everything for controlling populations that do not resist. When faced with actual opposition, their systems become vulnerable in ways they never anticipated." The evidence was everywhere. Council weapons were designed to overwhelm primitive defenses, not to fight against prepared enemies. Council ships were built for intimidation rather than combat effectiveness. Council administration was structured to manage compliant populations, not to deal with rebellion or resistance. They have been playing a game with no real opponents for so long that they have forgotten how to actually compete, observed Dr. Yujin Nam during one of her technical briefings to the fleet commanders. Their entire civilization has become specialized for easy victories against inferior opponents. The human presence in the Kepler 442 system had an effect that no one had anticipated. Velhan civilians began organizing resistance movements, not against the humans, but against their council overlords. For the first time in decades, they remembered that they had choices beyond submission and compliance. The council response was swift and brutal. Vextar ordered military intervention to crush the growing unrest before it could spread to other systems. 3 council battle fleets converged on Kepler 442b with orders to restore order by any means necessary. The human fleet was vastly outnumbered and outgunned. 8 human ships faced 37 council vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything humanity had built. By all conventional military analysis, the humans should have been annihilated within minutes. Instead, something unprecedented happened. The Velhan population rose in revolt against their council occupiers, disrupting supply lines and communication networks across the entire system. Other subject species in nearby systems, inspired by reports of human defiance and Velhan, resistance began their own uprisings. Jae-hyun Park found himself commanding not just the human fleet, but a coalition of desperate species who had suddenly remembered what freedom meant. The tactical situation was chaotic, but it favored the rebels. Council forces were designed to control compliant populations, not to fight a multi-species insurgency spread across dozens of worlds. "This is Captain Jae-hyun Park to all council forces," he broadcast on military frequencies. "You are facing organized resistance from the people you claim to protect. We suggest you reconsider your position before this situation escalates beyond your ability to control." The Council Fleet Commander, Admiral Thekvar, responded with traditional intimidation tactics. His ships demonstrated their superior firepower by destroying several uninhabited asteroids, then demanded immediate human surrender. But the human response was unlike anything in the Admiral's experience. Instead of surrendering or fleeing, the human ships began a series of coordinated attacks that targeted specific systems on Council vessels. They were not trying to destroy the enemy ships. They were trying to disable them in ways that would minimize casualties while maximizing psychological impact. "Their targeting is impossible," reported the Admiral's tactical officer. "They are hitting systems that should be impossible to reach with their primitive weapons. It is as if they understand our technology better than we do." The truth was exactly that. Months of studying captured Council technology had given human engineers detailed knowledge of Council ship designs and their vulnerabilities. Yujin Nam's teams had identified critical weaknesses that even Council engineers did not know existed. The first Council ship was disabled when human torpedoes delivered computer viruses directly into its central processing systems. The ship's weapons went offline, its engines failed, and its life support began cycling air in patterns that made the crew dizzy and confused. The second ship lost its shields when human energy weapons created harmonic resonances in the shield generators, causing them to consume their own power supplies. The third ship found its navigation systems compromised when human hackers introduced subtle errors into its stellar positioning algorithms. Within hours, half the Council fleet was either disabled or operating at reduced effectiveness. The humans had not destroyed a single enemy vessel, but they had rendered the entire fleet combat ineffective through a combination of superior tactics and intimate knowledge of Council weaknesses. "This is impossible," Admiral Thekvar transmitted to Vextar's flagship. "They are primitive. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. How are they defeating us?" Vextar had no answer. The reports from Kepler 442b made no sense according to everything the Council understood about warfare and technology. The Galactic Council faced complete collapse. In the 6 months since the Kepler 442b incident, 47 member worlds had declared independence, 12 more were in open revolt, and reports of unrest were coming in from across the galaxy. Supreme Leader Vextar stood in his command chamber, watching as the empire his people had built over millions of years crumbled around him. "The situation is beyond recovery through normal means," reported Council Elder Thraknos, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "We are losing member worlds faster than we can suppress rebellions. Our military forces are stretched beyond their limits, and morale among our own species is declining as they question the foundations of our authority." Vextar's 4 eyes dimmed with defeat, but deep within him a darker emotion was growing. If the Council could not maintain its empire through traditional means, perhaps it was time to demonstrate why that empire had been necessary in the first place. Perhaps the galaxy needed to be reminded of what happened to species that rejected Council protection. "Prepare the final protocol," he commanded, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. "If we cannot rule the galaxy, then we will cleanse it of the infection that threatens to destroy everything we have built." The final protocol was the Council's ultimate weapon, a planet-killer device that could render entire star systems uninhabitable. It had been built but never used, held in reserve as the ultimate deterrent against galactic rebellion. Vextar intended to use it on Earth, making an example that would terrify the galaxy back into submission. But the Council's military situation was far worse than Vextar realized. The human concept of asymmetric warfare had spread throughout the rebel species, and Admiral Sunho Han, commanding Earth's defense fleet, had spent months coordinating resistance efforts across multiple star systems. Sunho stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, studying tactical displays that showed the positions of over 300 human and allied vessels scattered across 50 different systems. The fleet had grown far beyond anything Earth had originally planned, as more and more species contributed ships and crews to the cause of galactic freedom. "Council forces are massing in the Zeta Reticuli system," reported his tactical officer, Commander Lee. "Intelligence suggests they are preparing some kind of superweapon for deployment against Earth." Sunho nodded grimly. They had expected this moment. When a tyrannical empire faced complete collapse, its leaders often chose destruction over defeat. But humanity and their allies had prepared for this possibility. "Signal all fleet commanders," Sunho ordered. "Operation Liberation is authorized. Target every Council military installation simultaneously. This ends today." The coordinated assault that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human-led fleets struck at Council positions across dozens of star systems, not to destroy them, but to disable their weapons and capture their command structures intact. The goal was not conquest, but liberation, freeing the oppressed populations, while preserving as much of the existing infrastructure as possible. Kyungmin Yoon's revolutionary ship designs proved decisive in the campaign. His engineers had developed vessels that could operate independently for months while maintaining communication across interstellar distances. The ships were not larger or more powerful than Council vessels, but they were more flexible, more adaptable, and commanded by crews who understood what they were fighting for. The Council's mistake was building an empire based on fear and dependency, Kyungmin explained during a strategic briefing. "Their ships are designed to intimidate populations that cannot fight back. Our ships are designed to fight alongside populations that refuse to give up." The first major victory came at the Rigel system, where a human Velhan joint force disabled the entire Council fleet without destroying a single ship. The key was a new type of weapon that Yujin Nam's team had developed based on their understanding of Council technology, devices that could overload alien systems without causing permanent damage. "We are not trying to exterminate the Council species," Yujin reported to the Allied command structure. "We are trying to free them from their own system of oppression. Many Council citizens are victims of their government's policies, just as much as the subject species they rule." This philosophy of liberation rather than conquest proved crucial as the campaign progressed. Council military personnel who were captured were not imprisoned or executed. Instead, they were exposed to the testimonies of the species their empire had oppressed and given the opportunity to join the liberation effort. The results were remarkable. Entire Council fleets began switching sides as their crews learned the truth about what their empire had become. The rigid hierarchical structure that had been the Council's strength became its weakness when individual commanders began making independent decisions based on their own consciences rather than orders from above. Admiral Thekvar was the first high-ranking council officer to openly defect, bringing his entire battle group over to the Allied side after witnessing the aftermath of a council pacification operation on a rebel world. "I joined the council military to bring peace and order to the galaxy," he declared in a broadcast that reached every corner of council space. "I never realized that what we called peace was actually the silence of the oppressed, and what we called order was actually the systematic destruction of freedom." But Vextar remained determined to destroy Earth rather than accept the collapse of his empire. The final protocol weapon was activated and began its journey toward the Sol system, escorted by the most loyal council forces remaining under his command. Mi Young Choi, who had been working to establish a new galactic government based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission, received word of the approaching superweapon with calm determination. As Earth's ambassador to the newly formed Free Species Alliance, she had been preparing for this moment. "The Council's last desperate action will be their final defeat," she announced to the emergency session of the Alliance Assembly. "They intend to destroy Earth as an example to terrify other species back into submission. Instead, their action will demonstrate to the galaxy exactly why their empire must end." The defense of Earth became a galactic effort. Ships from dozens of species converged on the Sol system, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. The fleet that assembled to protect humanity's homeworld was the largest voluntary military force in galactic history. Captain Jae-hyun Park, now commanding the Allied Space Forces, coordinated the defense with a level of efficiency that impressed even experienced Council military observers. The Allied fleet did not take a defensive position around Earth. Instead, they intercepted the Council superweapon halfway between Earth and Alpha Centauri. The battle was not the massive space conflict that most observers expected. Instead, it was a demonstration of the fundamental difference between an empire based on fear and an alliance based on choice. The Council forces fought with the desperation of beings who knew they were defending a dying system. The Allied forces fought with the confidence of beings who were building something better. Kyungmin Yoon's ship designs proved their worth in the final engagement. Allied vessels surrounded the Council superweapon and systematically disabled its systems using the non-destructive weapons that had become humanity's signature technology. The weapon that was supposed to destroy Earth was instead converted into a massive space station that would serve as the headquarters for the new galactic government. Vextar's final transmission came from his disabled flagship as Allied forces boarded it with the intention of arresting him for crimes against galactic freedom. "You have doomed the galaxy," he declared. "Without Council authority, chaos will consume everything. Species will war against each other until nothing remains." The response came not from a human, but from Elder Kethran of the Velhan, whose people had been among the first to be liberated from Council rule. "We have ended your chaos," the Elder replied. "For millions of years, your empire has consumed the freedom and dignity of countless species. True peace can only exist when it is chosen, not imposed." The aftermath of the Council's defeat brought challenges that no one had fully anticipated. Thousands of species that had been dependent on Council authority for generations suddenly found themselves free to make their own choices. Some adapted quickly to independence, while others struggled with the concept of self-governance. Mi Young Choi worked tirelessly to establish the framework for the new Galactic Federation, based on principles that humans took for granted but were revolutionary to most alien species: voluntary membership, democratic representation, and the right of any species to leave the Federation at any time. "The greatest gift humanity has given the galaxy is not advanced technology or military victory," she observed during the founding ceremony of the Galactic Federation. "It is the simple idea that every sentient being has the right to say no to authority they do not accept." The former Council leadership faced a choice that their own empire had never offered to its subjects. They could accept rehabilitation and education about concepts like consent and voluntary association, or they could be exiled to uninhabited worlds where they could build whatever society they chose without oppressing others. Remarkably, most chose Rehabi.